Good evening. I'm trying to do too many things at once on my computer, so I've been having some technical difficulties. And this is actually the third time I've recorded this. But I'd like to talk to you about something special this evening. You see, there's a lot of bad stuff going on, but I have a project I'm working on. It's actually a romance novel. Now, you probably don't know me, but if you do, you'll probably be saying to yourself right now the same thing that everybody else has said. But that's not your thing. And no, it isn't. But why not? Definitely a challenge. This is a science fiction romance novel because, well, romance isn't my thing. Science fiction is one of my interests, and I do have to keep it interesting. As Lovecraft is reputed to have said, without interest there can be no art. Now, one of the issues I've been having with all my writing, not just this particular project, is that I'm lousy when it comes to coming up with unique names, and pay no attention to the vermin yapping from downstairs. I just hope it shuts up and stays that way. Now, to solve this, I created a character generator that will support up to 5.5 billion unique names. That's billion with a B. Math, I know. Now, this is created in Excel. So let me get that opened up for you. Okay. It's not really a program in and of itself, it's a macro-enabled Excel file, but there was a lot of Visual Basic coding involved. Now, we have a character already generated. Let me turn this off, as that wasn't supposed to be on. So this is actually a character in the story, one of the first supporting characters that will be there for the entirety of the story that I've introduced. In fact, the very first. Her name is Mina Harper Ryan. She has extra long black hair, blue eyes, and animal ears. Yes, she has functioning animal ears, but no, this is not an anime. Although I did get that vibe. There are more extreme features, including skeletal reshaping that turns someone's head into an actual animal head, so you really might have Anubis walking around. There's a limit to what can be done because, well, the bones can be reshaped, but after a certain point it interferes with the jaw and can put pressure on the brain, and that's a bad thing, basically. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of characteristics, some of which can be elaborated upon in this screen. For instance, her local dialect. I think she has her local dialect is just a local settlement or planetary language. Just a, generic language I don't want to have to go into the history of. Her second language is actually a special language. I don't know if I can I can't actually access the controls because there's the control for my recording program in the way. But it describes Confed. It was basically an attempt at a unifying interstellar language that Earth was responsible for, but as usual, Earth doesn't follow its own rules, and ultimately the language was mandate was deemed essentially unconstitutional by the Systems Confederation, but a bunch of planets adopted it anyway because it was a good idea, or at least it seemed so at the time. Anyway, we got her voice, we've got her religion, we've got her personality. She doesn't have any pets or hobbies. Her parents, she's actually a widow, which is interesting. She's short and thin. Fears insufficient training, and she wants to be part of a terraforming project. Over here, we've actually condensed that down into paragraph form and added some extra information. Not all of it works out rather as well as we like, because what we have here, you can't see it in the formula bar up top, but it's basically what's in here is not actually text, but a very complicated and very lengthy formula that's based on several other very complicated and very lengthy formulas, which in turn is based on several other very complicated and very lengthy formulas. The net effect is it does something like, if you're familiar with what's called Mad Libs, basically these were like short stories or writings with blanks in strategic places, and you were supposed to have your audience fill in the blanks with the appropriate part of speech, and the results were often amusing. It's the same thing here, except instead of an audience throwing in random words, there are word banks, and the words are selected randomly based on what appears elsewhere. It's pretty complicated. The important part is getting the syntax right. Now this is a little rough, it's not perfect. Sometimes it says she instead of her, or her where it should say hers. Picky headache things like that. This is not prepared for distribution, this is for my own personal use, so a few errors will not go amiss. Now, this is for a romance novel, and romance novels are known for their sexual content, so this does create random sexual characteristics for the characters too. As you can see, she identifies herself as a straight switch, gives her favorite positions. Basically it says what she likes, what she doesn't like, what she's always wanted to try, and what she'll never do. And the most interesting feature, the last one I added, is this down here. It's an AI image generation prompt. Basically, it's telling you you may still have to plug stuff in. This is probably the neatest page I've got. Am I all the way over? No, I'm not. Okay, so you can enter an override if you wish. For instance, she's not young anymore now, she's old. With violet eyes. Say we don't like animal ears. Let's give her some, functional implants. Let's give her elf ears instead. I think if that comes up in the story, I'm going to just substitute something else. A chest tattoo, okay. That's better. And these are extra keywords that can be selected, and these are LoRa keywords. These are keyed towards the LoRa's I have installed. So, yeah, it might not work for somebody else. For somebody else, it would just be normal keywords, and it would depend on whether the model recognized them or not. So, it takes the input data over here. It translates it into something that I think a image generation model would see more easily. And then it consolidates them. Basically, it puts a bunch of them together. And then it creates a text prompt. Going back to the generator, image generation is now enabled, and basically we select this, copy it, and paste this text into the image generation text bar. But I'm going to go ahead and disable it. Okay, so now that we know what it does, let's look at how it does it really quick. Now, all of these are based on banks of variables. As I said, there's up to 5.5 billion unique potential name combinations. And each one of those, the components that those 5.5 billion names are made from, can be changed, deleted, or more can be added. These are the main variable banks. And these work from randomizers. While this looks pretty complicated, and as you can see there are a lot of these different variables, all the way down to 5 random colors that can be used to customize other variables. But each one of them works the same. There are anywhere from 2 to 4 columns that will have a data point, in this case a name, and a random number next to it. This column of random numbers is called a helper column, by the way. Generally its purpose is to help sort data in a column next to it, and that's exactly what it does. There is a macro that for each data point and each helper column, it will select the entire paired column, or in some cases all 4 columns, and sort it by the helper column, in this case column C. Now these numbers are randomly generated each time something changes. So if I were to type in, instead of Pierre, make him Jacob, and press enter, all the random numbers on this page would change. Now it does this with names, middle names, ages, you can see, clothing, that's not used here, that's used I believe in the image generation prompt, hair color along with description, so this is 3 columns, hairstyle 3 columns. As you can see with hairstyles, some have descriptions, some just say a hairstyle, look it up, because I honestly don't know what all those hairstyles are or have to describe them. If it pops up, I'll look it up in a dictionary or on the internet or whatnot. Voice has 4 columns, because what we have here is the voice that appears, how it is treated in terms of, say, the story, if I have to refer to it, and a description. I actually looked all of these up because I had no idea what a Ligero tenor was. And this is just the male voices. Over here we have the female voices. Once again, we got 4 columns. 4 columns for the religions too. And these all have descriptions. We even have Tolkienism. And somewhere here will be the Church of... Yep, the Church of Skippy. Props to you if you know to whom I refer. In fact, I think Skippy did have his cult. Here we have a randomizer that determines how devoted the person is to their religion, and describes it over here. This is very important. Here we have our pronouns sorted into uppercase and lowercase, depending on where it appears in a sentence. If it needs to come at the start of a sentence, it'll reference the formula, whatever it is, will reference the top row. If it's somewhere else where it's not capitalized, it'll reference the bottom row, just so I can get everything right. Now, let's look at a few other pages very quickly, and the easiest way to do that is just to unhide everything. And we've already seen image generation. So, tables, this is where most of the variables that appear in the column on the left come from. That's where all of these are generated. And that's where this stuff comes from too, except the NSFW, which does indeed stand for not safe for work. I had to call it something. So these are the primary randomizers. Seen these. Bioassembly is what creates that text biography. It basically creates individual sentences, then it strings those sentences together. Down here we have some random number generators, 10, 16 digits, 5, 10 digits, and 2 each of 5, 3, and 2 digits. And the randomizers that produce them are up above. Once again, we have our pronouns because I didn't want to have to reference something on another sheet. The backup is literally just a copy of the tables. When you create a backup, it copies everything on the sheet to this sheet. When you restore a backup, it copies everything back. Normally you wouldn't see this. The only reason you are is because I've deliberately unhidden it. Unless something unhides it, you'd never see this page. It's only accessed when screen updating is turned off. Finally, this is how the character acquires sexual characteristics. Here we have our list of kinks. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many more. And we have descriptions divided into giving and receiving. Trialism, I think, is being in a threesome. In this case, giving and receiving don't really matter. Impact play, essentially hitting someone or being hit. I know that's a gross oversimplification, and someone who's actually into that would not describe it in quite that way. But there is a difference between flashing and being flashed, and it knows it. Some positions, once again, obviously not an exhaustive list, and some roles, much of them courtesy of FetLife, which has far more. I think they make them up on a daily basis, and no one except the person who makes them up knows what they mean. Anyway, down here we have our lists. As you can see, we have our randomizers down here. Yes, no determines the giving or the receiving, by the way. Now, basically what happens is their fetishes are going to be the first 5 kinks on the list. Their soft limits, things that they don't really want to do, but, might with the right person, they're going to be the next 5 down. Hard limits, let's see, phobophilia. Yes, the hard limits are going to be the last 5. Here we have, phobophilia, imprisonment, asphyxia, tours, and hypoxia. These are things that they absolutely will not do. And then we have a list of 5 things that they might like to try. These are, I think, the third group of 5 down. So it should be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 is intoxication. Yep, okay. Now, but that's just what they like, and this puts it into a sentence structure. Once again, we have the pronouns. We have a little more data here. So, 2, 3. These 4 yes-no columns determine whether they like receiving or giving. I forget which is which, it doesn't really matter. This column right here with the empty yellow bar accompanying it for probably descriptions, I forgot, it's a feature I didn't use, determines whether they're straight, bi, or homosexual. Although you can't see it here, there is actually a 1 in 2,000 chance they'll be trans, but for the most part, trans is not a thing in this universe, since it's assumed that many hundreds of years in the future, people being what they are, that the capability will exist to actually turn men into women, not just arrange the furniture so they can pretend. And if you think about it, that could be a very useful feature when you need to manage a colony population thousands of light years. Well, we haven't exactly worked out just what interstellar distances we're concerned with, but a very, 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 very long way away from any chance of population refreshment and far away from any kind of supplies. Basically, in order to maintain the required biodiversity, you'd want a certain number of males and a certain number of females. And while I assume there would be societal taboos around that kind of arrogant playing of God, we're humans. We play God. It's our thing. Someone will do it. And hey, since it's my universe, I can say someone will do it. So there's no need for trans people. But, there'll always be somewhere where there's some kind of religious taboo where there isn't the tech base to actually change someone's sex. So it might still be a thing. However, we do transsexual, not transgender, because the word gender does not appear in here. Anyway, these are all building blocks that these paragraphs are made from. Role and orientation, activities, hard limits, would like to try, and partner preferences. All of it works off the same, highlighting 2 or 3 columns and sorting by random numbers. Now, as I said, Mina's an existing character. She's already been implemented, and she actually gained windsurfing. Something very easy to do, but very, very, very dangerous to do in on the planet we're talking about here. But let's create ourselves a completely new character. Now I can create a dedicated male character, and he'd be named Pierre if that was the case, with this one, and it changes it in real time because that's the way the formulas are set up. I really would rather it not do that, but that's just how it works. It's good enough for me. You can see it's changed the hers to his. I think there's a point somewhere down here, yeah, where it says sometimes wonders what him life might have been like had he had him parents. It should say his. Probably I need to change a universal reference. Yeah, because you can't see the formula bar up here, but I see variable references but no universal references. Those dollar signs sometimes make the difference when the formulas themselves are changing location. Anyway, let's create us a new character. This will be a random character. So we want to select random, hit generate, and hope my computer isn't working on too many things at once. Okay, it worked. Your character has been generated. In case you're wondering, this program won't work on all versions of Excel. It will not work with my laptop, for instance. So there's actually two generator macros. And the first one, if it detects an error, it actually calls the second one. And so I can use the same program on both my desktop and my laptop. Ignore the noise from downstairs if you can hear it. Taiki Halin Pushkin. Okay, that sounds a bit Russian. And Taiki is Greek. Yes. Now, Taiki isn't a male name. Taiki's a female name, but, well, it sounds like one. I used that name for a character in one of my stories, so I carried it over as a male name, not a female name. Taiki, in case you're wondering, is the Greek equivalent of the Roman Fortuna, the goddess of luck and fortune. In case I didn't just mention it, I also have a cat named Taiki. He's a he too, so I really misused that name, but I figure in a couple hundred years, who's gonna care? Heck, Paris is a guy's name. I think Paris Hilton got it from the city, which got it from the Greek hero. Although, if I recall, he was pretty effeminate to begin with, so maybe it's reasonable. Anyway. Taiki has no distinguishing features. He's a cosmic Taoist. Okay. Let me just read you his bio. Curiously enough, it looks like the pronouns are correct in this iteration. Anyway, Taiki Halin Pushkin is a 32-year-old man originally from Solus. He has short blonde hair styled primarily in a faux hawk. A false mohawk, I wonder what that looks like. His smoldering brown eyes look out from behind pale crimson-colored contacts that study the world around him. He is tall, with an average body that displays his none. What that means is essentially he doesn't have any features. The formula isn't quite robust enough to deal with all the complexities, and it would take a couple days to sort out. If this were being distributed, I'd do that, but since it's not... Anyway. Taiki Pushkin is a closet cosmic Taoist. He keeps his faith separate from his early day life. His hobbies include vid-watching and more vid-watching, which he does whenever he can. He doubly enjoys this and isn't in the market for additional hobbies. Now, it's more robust than usual here. In this case, it checks for a duplication of vid-watching, since vid-watching is so common. And if it finds that the primary and secondary hobby are both vid-watching, it kind of comments on that when it says he doubly enjoys it. It won't do that for any other combination of hobbies. He has no pets and has never wanted any other pets. He suffers from minor allergies that present difficulties in regard to frequent exposure to many of the most popular traditional pets. So he essentially has pet allergies, but that's okay because Haven's Reach doesn't have any native life, and it's an awful long way in an awful unhospitable environment to bring a pet. He's an orphan whose parents died when he was a young child. Taiki was subsequently raised by distant relatives whose surname he took as... Okay, there's a problem because it says as her own. Yeah, they're endless bugs like this. But I know what it means, and that's okay. And another bug, he doesn't remember them well enough to miss them. He is currently and unhappily engaged. Now that sounds like an arranged marriage. Or maybe it's for money. Okay, well, his second language is Chinese. I believe Chinese culture allows for arranged marriages, so yeah, it could be an arranged marriage. He has Parsley syndrome. That's an interesting one. That's actually related to Parsley syndrome. That was that tied in with, what did I call it? Interstellar drive technology. Not really understood medical history. Okay. Parsley syndrome, in spite of the name, is a psychological and psychosomatic reaction to being exposed to an operating interstellar drive. Parsley syndrome, it actually is, I think it should be syndrome, not syndrome, but minor details, is incredibly rare and very poorly understood. It is known to occur, but no one understands why or how. Symptomology covers a wide range of potential and seemingly unrelated psychological and somatic manifestations. Phantom pains and paranoia are common. In all cases, the afflicted individual will bleed without any detectable injury, experience hair loss, and severe depression and anxiety. This is accompanied by restlessness and excessive energy. It is not uncommon for those suffering from Parsley syndrome to be incapable of sleeping, and sleep cannot be artificially induced. This can either be transitory or permanent, with symptoms fading once the victim is no longer exposed to an interstellar drive field, or once again it can be permanent, leading to death. Autopsies have revealed no physiological or pathological cause. So, Parsley syndrome's rare, but bad stuff, really. Basically, the thing was, you can get it once and get over it, or you can get it and it'll come back every time you're exposed to interstellar drive, which would mean you'd essentially be stranded somewhere. If you went on a trip, you'd be unable to go home because the ride home might kill you. Or most of the symptoms might go away, but some would remain. I'm not really interested in his sexual antics, but prey and bisexual, okay, are spooning and cowgirl. He loves fireplay, being tied, being asphyxiated, and degrading, but he especially loves double penetration. He has absolutely no interest in feet, zero graphic, exhibitionism, edge play, or trialism. And so forth. So, this is my random character generator. As you can see, it's very rough, but I only put about 2 days of work into it. So, for the amount of coding, it should be pretty rough. And there is coding and there is coding. Let me go to the developer menu. Okay, so this is the Visual Basic code that runs the macros. There are 3 different modules. Bioassembly sorts clear. Okay, so what this is here is that's the randomizer that works on the bioassembly page. Here's the generator component for the bioassembly page. This is the base generator for the sexual content. This is the AI image enablement prompt. This basically takes you back to the main page when you click on or click that you're done. Okay, yep. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to tell you how this macro works. So application screen updating equals false. Basically what that does is it tells it to stop showing what's being done on the screen. That's why when I ran those character generation macros, you didn't see it switching between 5 sheets and performing actions on each one of them, because I told it to just don't show that. It selects the image generation sheet. That'll be selected anyway because that'll be the active one. This can only be activated either manually or by pressing the button on the image generation page. Then it makes the character sheet visible. What all of my macros do that switch sheets is they make the sheet it was on invisible, so you only see the current sheet. Or in one case, the current sheet that you're editing and the previous sheet, because you'll need to cross-reference things. Then it's, and this is actually a roundabout way of doing it. What this is doing is it's selecting the image generation sheet and then making the active sheet invisible. If I had done this manually rather than recording it, as soon as the character sheet was visible, I'd have switched to the character sheet. In fact, let me edit that now. Has to all be capitalized. I don't need this scrolling. You can go with range before select, that won't hurt anything. Okay, anyway, so what this does is it tells it to stop showing what's happening on screen. It selects the current sheet. It makes the character sheet visible. It switches to the character sheet. It makes the image generation sheet invisible. It displays the text box. Please copy and paste the contents of the prompt generator into stable or easy diffusion. Remember to paste as plain text. And then it turns screen updating back on so you can see what's going on the screen and interact with it. And then it ends the subroutine. Very, very simple. It does something very similar here, and this is when it disables the AI image prompt. The reason it works is because you see how it says disabled and not currently enabled? Well, what that macro does is if you hit that disable button, it changes this to disabled, which the contextual formatting causes the text box to turn red instead of green. But while you can't see it up here, there's a formula in this box that says if this box here says disabled, display the text not currently enabled. But if it says anything else, look in the text box on the image generation page. So if I were to manually type enabled, it appears. And it doesn't matter if I just type. Whenever I next enable it, it will change this to enabled. Or disabled. If I spell it right. Okay. And that is your crash course in Excel for today. Let's generate another character and then we'll wrap this video up because we're already 37 minutes in. Attila Kendall Rossi. Extra long fingernails, okay. 32, Reformed Catholic. Green eyes with chromatic contacts, victory rolls. That's like something, that's actually something ChatGPT made up for me and didn't give me a description on. He's a secret Catholic too, that sounds kind of ominous. Okay. We'll look at one thing, just because this shows you how things change here. His hobbies include vid watching and vid watching, just like the last guy, which he does whenever he can. However, it doesn't say he doubly enjoys that anymore, because that's random. What he instead says is he would also like to take up airsoft, but has never had the time. He always swears he'll get around to it one of these days, however. Attila has been telling himself this for years now, and it hasn't happened yet, so it's one of those things. Alright. He's separated and polyandrous. He speaks only a local dialect. From Onyx. Okay, that's the name of a planet from the Halo series, but it's okay because I don't know anything about Onyx, so I'm just using the same name. It seems good enough. He's a lyric mezzo-soprano. Actually, I think we've got something wrong here. Tables AW3, BA3. Okay. Let me change something. Actually, I'll work on that later. I've kept you long enough. Anyway, the random... Actually, let me diagnose that really quick. I bet this changes to okay. So we have a problem here. The problem here, and that'll can easily be fixed, is if this is random, it's going to give you the female vocal quality rather than the male. The reason for this is a formula. If B4 equals male, it looks in the male column. Otherwise, it looks in the female column. But if this is random, then it's going to say, well, it's not male, so I'm going to look in that female column. And that's why it's giving me a female vocal quality instead of a male when I have it set to random. It's also why switching it to to male, changes him from a soprano to a baritone. Like I said, full of bugs. It would take a week to get them all out, and since I can mentally compensate for them, there's no point. But if anybody wants to make use of this generator, when I have time, I'll fix it up and make it freely available. As soon as I can get the size down, because at some point it ballooned from less than a megabyte to 29 megabytes, and I can't send it through email. That's life for you. Okay. Once again, character generator, folks, accept no substitutes. Have a nice day.